Okay. Hey guys, can you guys hear me? Well,
Yeah.
okay. So we're gonna start week 1 of Python with Elevate the Future Maryland. So we're gonna do introductions first. We're each gonna say our names and then say what grade we're in, and then a fun fact about ourselves, and then why we decided to take this class or learn Python. So I'll go first. My name is Samira. I'm in 11th grade, and a fun fact about me is, oh, great. See, I don't, it flies out of my mind. I like reading, I guess.
Hello, I am Kevin. I'm a junior at Winston Churchill High School, and I am a Boy Scout. I guess that's my fun fact.
Hello, my name is Femi. I'm in 11th grade and I like reading.
Okay. Well, we're gonna start off with what is Python? Python is a language for computers. So Python, computers understand languages like Python. There are other programming languages, but Python is just one of them. Python allows us to do a lot more than Scratch. If you're familiar with Scratch, Scratch is just block coding. Another thing about Python is that it's a high-level programming language. A high-level programming language basically means that it's closer to human language. It's easier for us to read, and it takes longer for the computer to read. A low-level programming language would be something that's harder for humans to read, but it's more efficient for computers. If we look at the picture on the side, we can see the stuff that is hardest for humans to understand is things like binary code and hexadecimal. But if we go all the way up, things that we can understand are Python and other programming languages like JavaScript. Python is used mostly for personal things. Most people learn programming using Python mainly because it's so easy for us to understand it. It's also used by companies. Python is used by companies to make their computers work. And a lot of companies use Python. Some examples would be Dropbox, NASA, Yahoo, IBM, Facebook, YouTube, I think that Firefox, and Google. So a lot, very useful. Python, why is it so popular? It's very concise and it requires a lot less time and a lot less lines of code. It's very simple programming syntax and English-like commands that make coding very easy. You'll notice that it's almost like writing. There's not a lot of semicolons and like parentheses and all this stuff. Python programs are slower than Java. However, they take less time to code. So you kind of give or take the time. And lastly, it's a fun language. It's used in a lot of games, data science, and a lot of other things. So let's go over some basic syntax.
Okay, so I'm going to be going over basic syntax for you guys. So one of the most important things in Python and a lot of other languages is indentation. So indentation is just the spaces at the beginning of a line of code. For example, you can see in this image, like this is a function. You'll learn more about that later, but everything inside the function is like shifted a bit to the right. And it's important because it tells Python that like the indented pieces of code, they're like part of something larger. Like again, if you look at the picture, everything inside the function is indented. That means that the like computer knows that it's part of the function, it's not part of something else. And that helps like the computer organize itself. And you also have to make sure that for each indent you have the same amount of spaces per indentation. Otherwise, there will be errors in your code. Okay. So then another thing that coders use in Python is comments. Like again, this is also something that's common across all languages. Comments are just a way of writing things in your code so that you can like read it later, and then like the computer will just ignore those lines of code. And then like people write comments because it allows them to go back inside their code, and if they're confused about what it's doing, they can just read the comments so they can tell what it does. And in Python, comments usually they start with like a hashtag, or in this case there are also some multi-line comments up here. You can use like three like double quotes to start and end one. And here are some examples. So here you can see this person, they wrote like a poem, I think. in Python using comments, and here, like in the second image, the one in the bottom right, the comments are explaining what each line of code is doing. So good programming etiquette. So commenting is very important because if you publish your code online and other people need to read it, it's important to have comments to make sure that other people can understand what you're writing. And then another thing to do, you should try to make your code as concise as possible, like to have the least amount of lines so that it's also less confusing to read. And if you're using the same value multiple times in your code, then you should probably make a variable for it so you don't have to keep repeating yourself. So on Python, the way you code is you can type things into whatever you're using the code. For example, you type print and then parentheses around it and then quotes to say hello world. You might not like completely understand what that is right now since it's just the beginning, but basically what it's doing is telling the computer to write out hello world onto like a line on your screen. And then the second line is asking for an input. So the computer will like ask you to type something in and then like it'll save the input as a variable. So now if you guys want to try, you guys can go to Replit. That's a site you can use the code online. It's repl.it. And then at the top right, there should be a sign up button. You can use your email or you can make your own account for it. And you should write down your username and password so that like you can remember it and like, keep it safe.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go to Replit and I'm gonna show creating a Replit. So you're gonna click create up here and then pick the Python one. And then you're gonna title it. So just title it practice. Practice Python. Then I'm gonna create the Replit. And so you're gonna see here on Replit, you're gonna find on the side is files of different code. Here is where you type your actual code. Okay, we don't have to listen to this. This is where you type your actual code. And then here is the run button, which is gonna run all your code. And then here is where your output's gonna be. So if you write any code, if it does any actions, if it prints anything, if it displays anything, it's gonna end up here. So go ahead and spend some time doing this, signing up and then writing down your password. And continue. Variables.
Okay, so I'm gonna be doing variables. Variables are used to store information. We often use like variables to store information that we're going to use multiple times. On the left side, it's always a phrase, and then the right is always the value. So at the bottom part is the examples of variables and how variables are used. So you can see okay. So next slide. Common variable types are strings, which are like for words, like text. And then there are integers, which are numbers, and then floating points or floats. And then booleans, which are like true or false. And certain operations can only be done by a specific variable type.
Okay, I'm gonna go for operators. So the assignment operators. This concept seems easy, but you have to be careful. The assignment operator is the equal sign. This is not the same as equals. You'll see that next week. The equal sign is only for assigning values to variables. So, okay, I thought there was going to be something there. But basically, you're going to have a variable name such as x, and then you're going to put the equal sign, and then you're going to have a number or a string, which is text, or a decimal number, which is float, and I'm going to put it on the other side of the variable. And you have to make sure you have the variable name on the left, and then your value on the right, and then in between them, you want to have the equal sign. and that's just going to assign the value. So here we have math. You can get the computer to do math for you, and it's able to calculate all basic arithmetic with addition, subtraction. That right there is multiplication, the star, and then division, which is the /. So for example, if we wanted to do 1 times 2, we would do print line, which is going to display it, and then we're going to have parentheses, and then 1, and then the star, which represents multiplication, and then 2, and then you're going to close parentheses. If you wanted to print 1 times 2, not the answer 2, but literally 1 times 2, you'd have to put quotations around it. So be careful with that. Make sure you put quotations in the right spot. And if we want to do 1 divided by 2, you just do print and then 1/2. And then there's also this right here on the 4th line is concatenation. You have print and then hello, which is in quotation marks. And then outside the quotation marks, you have a plus, and then you have the other word world. And what this is going to do is going to print hello and then add world to the same line. And then here, this is going to print basically the same thing, 1, and then it's going to print 2. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an activity that we can do to get started with some basic math in Python. We want you to create 2 variables that hold numbers. Create a 3rd variable that is those 2 numbers added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided. Then print out the sum, product, quotient, or difference is, and then with the 3rd variable printed. So go ahead and do that. You can pause the recording and work on it. I'm going to go over the answer right now. I'm going to walk you through it. So if we go to our Replit, go to our Replit, we're going to create 2 variables that hold numbers. So I'm going to have x equals 4, and then y equals 2. Those are my 2 variables, and I can write a comment that says 2 variables that hold numbers. Then I'm going to create a 3rd variable. Let's create z, and then let's do multiplication. So to do multiplication, we're going to have z equals, and then 4 times, which is the star symbol that's above your 8, and then 2. So what this is going to do, it's going to do 4 times 2, and then it's going to set it equal to z. And now let's keep our comments to make sure it's understandable. Assigning a variable with multiplication. And then now, the 3rd thing we want to do is we want to print out the answer. So we're going to do print, and then open and close parentheses, and write out the product is, and then to get the answer, make sure you put a space at the end, because when you print it out, it's not going to include the space. It's going to print exactly what's in the quotations. And then now I'm going to add a plus sign, and I'm going to print z. I'm going to add z. So if we run this, and there's an error. So the problem here is we are trying to print something out right now, but this is a string and this is an int. So to fix this, we're going to cast it. And this will, we'll get more into this later, but right now you just need to know that if you wanted to print out an int with some strings, it's not possible, you have to cast it. So here we have the answer. The product is 8. So let's go to the next slide. And here we have a Kahoot. We're not going to do the Kahoot right now, but the Kahoot is here. Let's see. Now we have some time to do some free coding. You can spend the next 10 minutes to do whatever you'd like in Python. Try getting an input, a print, or and use an operator. You can pause the recording and do that. And thank you very much. Should we go over the homework, I guess? So homework. It's not required, but if you do it, we will grade it and give you feedback. So it's for your benefit. The homework will it's going to be posted on the Google Classroom. The first day, you're just going to answer some questions on a Google Doc. Later, once we do actual coding, you can do it on Replit. But right now, it's just Google Doc. There's going to be 8 questions posted on Google Classroom. You could copy and paste the questions onto the Google Doc and just answer them. There's either free response or some true and false questions. And yeah, that is all there is today. Bye-bye. I'm going to stop recording.